And welcome back to another episode of the Filmistines. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I am joined by my wild friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
Remember, you can join us every Monday and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmistines on all of our free feeds and every other Wednesday on patreon.com/filmistines for Patreon exclusive episodes. Some recent episodes include the 2016 Suicide Squad, Happiness, Kinds of Kindness, Joker, and the Joker sequel, Folie à Deux. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come write in. Come request a film. Go subscribe to our YouTube. Rate us on Apple Podcasts as well. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But today we will be talking about Chris Sanders' 2024 release out of DreamWorks, The Wild Robot. And I just wanted to start off by saying that I very much enjoyed the first half of this film and very much did not enjoy the second half. We had this ultimate conclusion of a Disneyfication, which was not good, but I like the introduction a lot. We have this highly lethal depiction of nature. Everything wants to kill each other. We have this single mother energy that I quite enjoy. We have this interesting Fox character who kind of lives between best friend and Jiminy Cricket conscience. I think this film is a great example of the power of film and how it can manipulate without earning everything. But I'm very curious, how did you feel about The Wild Robot?
This was a pretty cute movie. The film had a few too many themes. We had motherhood, friendship, nature, disability, love, self-discovery, purpose, technology. And luckily, some of these themes do intertwine with each other. But I feel like it was trying to say something about all these themes that it missed a main point or a driving point.
I completely agree.
It should have focused on one while using the themes around it, because at some point I thought the motherhood theme was the main one, but then it completely got rid of it at the end. It's like, oh, okay, maybe not. And it kind of landed with a weird point. So I think it needed to find a focus.
Yeah, it felt like it had no idea what it wanted to say by the end. Because maybe the first half, up to the point where Bright Bill flew and was able to take off, Roz's purpose in the film seemed to kind of not matter all of a sudden outside of just being this fixture of the island now. It's like we had to just invent a new problem to just keep her there. Where the first 40 minutes focused almost solely on that single mother running around with her head cut off, not knowing how to operate in the world, having to figure it out, having no one there by her side, having to try to just make it happen.
Yeah, completely. It had too much wanting to say, and it was excited about trying to say these things. But then everyone knows when you ramble about some of the passionate things you're about, it starts to get lost on what you had to say about it to begin with. The film does come from a source material, but I've never read it. It's a pretty recent children's book. I think it came out in 2016. So that might be why I'm not super familiar with it. I thought it was older than that. It looked older than that. But films that come from a source material like a book, I feel tend to have a little bit of that problem. So I'm not sure what the book would mainly entail. It might have a better driving point than the movie. I also briefly wanted to mention that I saw on Wiki they're classifying this as a science fiction movie. And I don't know how I feel about this. Because part of me wants to exclude the science fiction label from animated films. Because I guess the science fiction animated films that come to mind would be Robots or Frankenweenie or Meet the Robinsons. And it may just be a me problem, but the animation world has such an endless possibility of what you can do in that world that it feels weird to give it a label like this. And I'm also trying to determine how important it is to have humans in a science fiction film or novel. Or is it just the implication of these humans' emotions enough? I don't know. Because science fiction tends to say something about the human condition.
Yeah, I know what you mean because science fiction implies something bigger than humans, either some kind of emphasis on technology and the implications. Yeah, I don't think the presence of a robot necessitates that kind of labeling, especially when the only true through lines here are the motherhood and then the survival working together aspect.
Yeah, there were two main aspects of the movie that gave me this science fiction vibe, which is in the first part, which is probably one of my favorite parts, where Roz doesn't understand the animals and she sits there and begins to analyze them to a point where she starts understanding their language and be able to communicate with them. I very much enjoyed that because I didn't know how we were going to make them communicate with each other after they made it obvious that they don't understand each other. But the main science fiction bit was that a robot could learn how to feel, which is a trope, but not quite in that sense. In science fiction, it's more of a question: is this android feeling, than having it confirmed that it felt something like we did here. I don't know. I wasn't excited about the science fiction label. But again, super minor, not what the movie's about. I wasn't stoked about the animation style. It's not bad. It's just not my thing. It gave me Wish vibes, this kind of storybook feeling. And I understand that the storybook vibes give a film a more serious tone. And some of the themes here require a serious tone. But the colors just felt a bit too neutral. And I understand we were in the forest, so they had to feel neutral. But maybe it just wasn't for me. The movie had cute characters, like our fox, the grizzly bear, and my favorite, the beaver, that's goal in life was to gnaw down this giant tree. Very adorable. The voiceover work was great too. Nobody felt weird, nobody felt off. I was even surprised at the end to find out that Pedro Pascal voiced the fox. So that's always nice when you don't notice who it is immediately. And even though the film wasn't super flowy, especially towards the later half, like you said, I completely agree with you. It didn't have any pacing issues for me. I wasn't bored at any time. I mean, the movie was an hour and 42 minutes. Great time. It didn't deter from any potential messaging it had to say. I also have a very soft spot for animals. So that means I couldn't stop crying most of the film.
Yeah, I liked the animation quite a bit, and the art style was very slick. It gave a lot of texture to the world. It gave a lot of depth. I liked the emphasis of history with Roz being on the island or whatever, the forest. The art style had this very concept art vibe, and it felt unfinished, and I liked it. It was very cool. And it's funny that it reminded you of Wish because the only thing interesting about Wish was its art style. And the voice acting was great. Like you said, if you can't immediately identify actors, that is a green flag at the very least. But the voices did, for the most part, fit completely. The only voice and performance, I don't know, that I didn't like was the bear. It was just weird and awkward.
Really? Yeah, the animation style to me felt like animation that's inside animation. It gave me very like Shrek vibes when Shrek pulls out a storybook. That's where we see that type of animation. Or in Puss in Boots where they have that weird animation shift. It just seemed like the whole movie shouldn't have been this kind of animation. Maybe just some perspective shots, or maybe just when Roz sees the world. I don't know. Roz's design looked like the Omnidroids from The Incredibles. Very spherical, these long limbs that do shit. It was pretty cool, but I wasn't super excited about her character design. As well as Brightbill's, his design was okay. I feel like the ducks in Migration had a bit more personality, design-wise, and maybe color-wise, than Brightbill here. And I'm only pulling out Migration because that's the most recent birds we've seen. Animated birds.
Yeah, I feel you. There's this kind of like vanilla nature to all of the design. Nothing is offensive to the eye. Nothing's striking outside of the slick animation and art style. But the characters are largely forgettable in that way.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean. That's why the Beaver is probably my favorite. Paddler, he's got more personality. He's an outcast. At the end, they have this really comical interaction where they're like, hey man, we need you. He's like, oh, now you need me. You've made fun of me my whole life, blah, blah, blah. The grizzly bear came in second for me just because of how gruff and tough he looked. And I did for a second think that the fox's name was Think. Well, not for a second. The entire movie, I thought the fox's name was Think, and I thought they were trying to say something clever there, some kind of symbolism that this was, like you said, her conscience. And then later I found out his name was Fink with an F, and I had to rethink everything I thought about him. But I liked him too. He was this character that needed some friendship, needed some love. We didn't focus in on it like I might have liked. But again, it's not his movie, it's not his story, so I understand that. But I guess if you were going to manipulate us, like you said, anyway, might as well manipulate me with this character that is in obvious need of some love.
I mean, on that note, Fink seems to be the only point in the movie that we really don't get that manipulation on, that like forced heart tug. And we have the most setup with his character too.
Oh yeah.
For something to happen towards the end. But we make the animals work together on different occasions. We have to come to the beaver that we made fun of one time in the very beginning. The old goose dies when we just met him, basically.
Yeah.
The geese pretend to have been on Bright Bill's side the whole time when they bullied him once, kind of thing. It's pretty lousy when it comes to setup. It kind of gives the reference of, oh, this is happening, and then just moves on because it just can't decide what it wants to really do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on some notes. The one with Bright Bill, though, I think they knew that and just went with it anyway and decided to sort of laugh it off as, oh, we were on your side the whole time, by having that one goose in the far, far away say, yeah, I believed in you from day one, Bright Bill.
And because they made a joke out of it, it does kind of sell the whole thing a little more to me. Absolutely.
But just that one section. Because you were right, with the old goose, that was completely manipulative. We do have this one interaction with Roz and the old goose where she's like, take care of him. And he's like, well, he needs to take care of himself first, and then I take care of him. That can justify his death a little bit more. But I'm not sure. Maybe we needed to do that in the sequel when we've already loved these characters.
Yeah. And it's kind of lousy from the point, too, that the old goose makes, because he kind of emphasizes the single motherness of Roz, in that your child of a single mother, in fact, even adopted, shouldn't make it in the world. They're not normal, right? Kind of thing. And then it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's good and all. But then he goes off and dies. And I guess he did give Bright Bill the chance to kind of impress the herd,
to prove himself,
the flock.
Yeah.
But that is literally right before he dies. It's just kind of, I mean, obviously rushed. And like, I don't know who you are, man. You said nice things to Roz, kind of, and reinforcing this single motherness. I love that. But did you even have to die? You know?
No, totally. And at the end, when Bright Bill comes back to the island, Fink is like, oh, what happened to whatever his name is, the old goose? And then Bright Bill just says he didn't make it, or he shakes his head. I don't know exactly what the interaction is. But you're kind of like, oh, Fink, you knew him? You knew who he was?
Yeah, did they even talk once?
Because Fink, you're a loner. You never interacted with half of these animals.
Yeah, your first friend is Roz.
Right. So it was weird. It was weird. I agree with you 100%.
It's a great example of manipulation in film and the power of film, because it's very much is a heart tug moment still.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the music, The soundtrack is great.
Yeah, they're zooming in on him as he flies. And
Yeah.
you know that he gets in front of that target and you know what happens.
It's great.
Yeah. Another example of that, and call me a hypocrite, that it's also my favorite part in the movie, but it's when Roz goes and saves the animals during winter. And her and Fink are pulling them out of holes. They're finding them. There's certain sections where these animals didn't look like they made it, but then they find them somewhere else, and slowly they start putting everyone in that giant hut that they had created. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that whole time I was crying.
Well, I think that section's actually much more earned because we spend the first 15 minutes trying to find a job for Roz. You know, she needs to work, she needs to do something, she needs to serve someone. And all of these guys ran away out of terror.
Yeah.
Right? Or whatever reason, because she's a freak. But that was also the introduction of her character, right? As little character as that really is, but she's a robot that is supposed to serve someone. And even on this journey of becoming so-called human, she knows this is the right thing to do and wants to do this. So I think that's an okay moment for you to really, become emotional on. I think it's mostly earned because that's kind of central to who she is, right? But that is at the beginning of the end for me as far as my enjoyment with this film, is when all the animals start working together in like a kumbaya kind of way. Of course, it's really funny. The next scene, they are all killing each other in the hut. It would have been great if they actually were killing some of each other.
That was giving me so much anxiety as they started putting animals into the hut. And, we're grown-ass people here. We know what happens when that gets done. When you put a grizzly bear in there with a shit ton of animals that grizzly bears eat.
And maybe having this kind of Disneyfication happen in a small drip way of when they're in there, they're fighting, the grizzly bear is in mid hibernation. So he's, cranky or whatever. He wakes up, he doesn't want any of this shit, right? And so he takes control and yells at everybody like he did. And then they're quiet and then they're cool for the rest of the winter. And then kind of keeping it right there. That's the maximum amount of peace we're going to have. And then afterwards, we break, everybody goes back to their normal lives. They, hunt and kill each other. But then they end up working together in a much more meaningful way. I was like, what happened to the high lethal forest we were in at the beginning of the movie where they were decapitating each other and eating each other? It felt very antithetical to the laws of this world. And I think it would have been an easy fix if we would have had them kind of work together without literally working together. Like kind of the beaver over here does something and it coincidentally leads them over to the bear, and then the bear clotheslines them or something. I don't know, where they weren't actually working together in an organized way, but in a more coincidental way.
Yeah, maybe the beavers help the beavers, which in the cycle of life, beavers helping themselves help the snakes. You know what I'm trying to say? It kind of cycles through.
Yeah, sure. Some kind of emphasis on the ecology working together without knowing they're working together.
Yes.
Of course, yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, because as serious as this film feels, it started out as a serious film. And it started out as a potential learning moment for families. Not only are the kids going to learn that animals die, things happen in nature, but parents are going to learn that when you have a kid, no matter how prepared you think you are, things are always going to be unexpected and it's okay. Then we lose that at the end. We completely lose that. And then it turns into what is being said about having a robot in nature.
It seems to kind of run with this unnaturalness, actually, where this unnatural entity, the robot operating in the wilderness, brings very unnatural phenomenon and consequences to that wilderness. Like all the animals working side by side, Avengers style.
Yeah.
And then it forgets that Roz is that single mother kind of character and seemed to have a really hard time doing anything else with the relationship of Roz and Bright Bill outside of them having to save each other. It's like, how many times are we going to save each other? Bright Bill went up into the ship to save Roz, and then Roz had to save Bright Bill, all in like one scene. I'm just like,
yeah.
Okay, it just sucks because we came out of the gate, sprinting. It was really kind of magical, and then just had no idea where to run. All right, man. Well, thank you for watching The Wild Robot with me and talking about it here today.
No problem. You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
My budget guess is going to be 80 million because it's DreamWorks, because it's animated. I'm going higher.
Well, it says here that it was $78 million.
Ooh!
And it's went on to make $200 million.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 241,000 people, they weighed in at a 4.3.
4.3? That's pretty high.
That's incredibly high. It's in the top 250 films on Letterboxd. I don't want to say anyone's wrong about liking this movie, but I think that power of that intro and then the soundtrack and even the voice acting and some of the set pieces just corner you into this emotional symphony,
Yeah, but there's something merit about the first and maybe second act of the film that just hits so hard. And the ending's the main problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll tell you here in a second, but the end destroys this film, I think.
No, I don't think it completely destroys it. I'm giving this movie a 2.5. I might have to go back and look at what I gave Inside Out 2.
Oh yeah, this movie's way better than Inside Out 2.
To kind of center myself on those scores. And I'm trying to think of other animated films that came out this year. Despicable Me 4.
Yeah.
But we did a ranking on Despicable Me 4 and the other Despicable Me movies and franchise. So I don't think I gave it a score. So I might have to recenter myself on these animated movies, what I've given them, how they've made me feel. But I do believe this movie is a bit better than Inside Out 2.
Yeah, totally. And if this film had that energy of that first half, it probably would be a 3.5 in my book. But it loses sight of having anything to say to a crazy degree that I'm with you on a 2.5. It's a solid movie, really interesting art style, at the very least, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Great voice acting, great set pieces. There's just not a lot of vision outside of that 40-minute, short film, really. If we would have ended on Bright Bill leaving, I would have been,
yeah.
I would have been much higher on this film, I think.
And Roz going back.
But that's only half the film, unfortunately. I didn't know it came from a children's book. It gave me kind of short film vibes. Like we had this truncated 20-25 minute film of raising Bright Bill to fly, the runt that was destined to never fly.
Right, to eat, swim, and fly.
Yeah, and that was it.
Yeah.
We kind of had the 3-act structure right there, right?
Yeah.
But then we continue for 40 more minutes into just nothing. I'm like, man. And we're getting further and further away from the majority being great. She's like, man, this was so good. What happened? But, it is what it is. 2.5. But yeah, man, thank you again for watching this movie. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday with brand new episodes of The Filmistines, and every other Wednesday on patreon.com/Filmistines for Patreon exclusive episodes. Our next free episode will be on the much beloved Big Hero 6.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes. Very much looking forward to that. Haven't seen that in a very long time.
Oh, I'm very much looking forward to that.
I hope you guys look forward to that too. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come request a film. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe to our YouTube, please. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/filmistines, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines, signing off.